Now I just want to give a quick update about the situation in Venezuela. There has been a completion of the counting of the seats, the counting of the votes. Now the situation is worse than was initially reported. The opposition now has 109 seats, while the Popular Socialist Party has 155 seats. This means that the opposition now has a supermajority in the National Assembly, which gives them significantly more power. What they can do now is call for a referendum to remove Nicolas Maduro as the president of Venezuela, meaning they could only call on a public vote on whether or not to take him out of office. So they can't directly do it themselves, but they can set up the vote where that might take place. Now, I also wanted to give some more information on the oil prices that have had such a tremendous effect on the Venezuelan economy. I alluded to them in the last video, but I didn't really give that much information, so let me give more of that now. President Nicolas Maduro's government has started to fizzle out as Brent crude prices fell below $40 a barrel for the first time since 2009. With oil accounting for 95% of Venezuela's foreign currency earnings, the drop in crude prices is threatening to push the country's fragile economy deeper into recession. Now, Venezuela's economy is expected to contract 10% this year by the International Monetary Fund. So now we have a bit of a better idea of, just how important oil revenue is for the country, and that if you do have a shortage of that, you've got a very serious problem. Now, one point that I would really like to make that I didn't make in the last video is that for over a decade, for about 15 years now, the United States and other Western media has been screaming about how Venezuela is not a democracy. It's a dictatorship. All the votes are rigged. Well, except for when they win, then all of a sudden the elections are fair and just. Even though, they didn't actually provide any evidence through all that time that the elections were frauds, they just kept claiming it because the United States couldn't get the imperialist candidate in. I mean, Jimmy Carter went down there, he went through the elections and said they were fully democratic. The UN went in, checked them, they were fully democratic, but that was never actually enough. It's amazing how just because the US-backed candidate gets into office, whoa, all of a sudden, Venezuela is a democracy now. After a decade and a half of screaming of how it was a tyrannical fascist dictatorship where people weren't allowed to vote. Or when you show them evidence that they're voting, the vote is rigged. Now, what I thought really here is another thing that speaks to the mentality of the imperialists. Nicolas Maduro didn't call for violence because his party didn't win the election. That's right. Now, normally when the opposition gets its ass handed to it, immediately they start going out, smashing things, burning down health clinics because that's totally in the interest of the Venezuelan people, and committing all kinds of acts of violence. And then the imperialist media turns around and says the socialists did everything. That's typically how it goes, but you notice how Nicolas Maduro lost and called for peace? Isn't that kind of the opposite to all the other incidences? So when Maduro wins, he carries out violence, but if he loses, he doesn't. Doesn't the right wing, people, in the West kind of get some kind of a sense that maybe they've been lied to this entire time, if they even actually notice what's happened here, if they've actually noticed this difference? But, then again, regardless, Venezuela is now still in a very bad situation, in which we now know is actually worse than it was before, given that the opposition now has a supermajority in the National Assembly. Here's to still hoping that Nicolas Maduro might pull off a revolution by calling in the worker and the peasant militias that they've set up over the past 10 years. Because frankly, at this point, the way things are going, that might be the only option they have to actually keep the Bolivarian revolution alive. If you like this video and you'd like to see more of them, then head over to my Patreon page and show your support. Or you can go to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share on various social media.